the urban legend that terrifies everyone. Yet the female lead thinks she is just an ordinary villainess. People she disliked mysteriously disappeared. She thought it was just required by the plot. Complaining casually about the bad weather, the entire city instantly cleared up. She thought it was just a coincidence. Little did she know, the little cutie she summoned for self-protection was actually a disaster. The words she casually spoke were divine edicts. Anyone who got close to her was monitored 360 degrees without any blind spots, living every day in indescribable fear. After transmigrating, the girl woke up in a coffin. She sat up abruptly and tilted her head. Silver-white, long hair cascaded down like a waterfall. Her crimson pupils scanned the morning hall. "What is my name?" Human words spilled from deceased lips. The entire morning hall instantly fell into dead silence. No one dared to answer. The candlelight flickered, illuminating faces filled with absolute horror. The priest's eulogy got stuck in his throat. That face accustomed to preaching mercy was now contorted, as if seeing an evil spirit crawling out of a crack in hell. One day ago, Evangeline, the only daughter of Count Rosen's family, died. It was publicly announced as an illness, but the servants working in the Count's family could never forget. Those pale feet dangling above the blooming flowers, swaying in the wind. The cherry blossoms bloomed beautifully. Even now, it was as if they could still smell the rich fragrance lingering at the tip of their noses. Perhaps because the cherry blossoms filling the coffin had replaced the original white lilies. Due to the unseemly cause of death, the funeral was ultimately held within the mansion rather than a public mourning outside. After the simple ceremony ended, the body, which should have been placed in the temple, was finally decided to be buried in a corner of the backyard with a tombstone. The temple never accepted those who took their own lives. This was truly an act of no alternative. But people unaware of the truth just thought the Count loved his daughter deeply and sent their condolences. The funeral was very simple. Logically, a noble's funeral should have been grand and magnificent all the way. However, Evangeline's ceremony was noticeably shabby, really lacking the extravagance expected for a noble daughter. The Count's family used the excuse of an infectious disease to decline the condolences from other nobles. Only the servants of the mansion and a few knights were present. It was unknown whether it was because of the sparse guests or because no one wept for the deceased despite it being a funeral, but a somewhat spine-chilling atmosphere permeated the hall. Only the priest's recitation of a eulogy carried a hint of eeriness. The one officiating the funeral was an obscure priest. Although his posture while reading the eulogy and his snow-white robes appeared devout, if he were truly a man who understood honor, he absolutely wouldn't stoop to this for just a few gold coins. As the priest finished, the prayer ceremony also neared its end. Now they only needed to close the coffin lid and place the body into the pre-dug grave. But in the dead silent mourning hall, a particularly harsh, rustling sound suddenly echoed. The priest, who highly valued his dignity, cleared his throat and issued a warning, trying to continue officiating the eulogy. But the commotion only grew louder. The sound of fabric rubbing, the clatter of objects and bones, the creaking of wood, these subtle noises continuously piled up. Finally, when the crowd started whispering, the priest, unable to bear it any longer, stopped his prayer and opened his eyes. Thus, the priest saw the source of the crowd's commotion. Silver-white hair cascaded down like a waterfall. The seemingly smooth texture of the hair wasn't like silk threads. It rather looked like spider webs gathered together and spun in a long strands. Her eyelashes fluttered slightly, revealing bright red pupils beneath opened eyelids. That color was not like a ruby-like mineral, but rather brought to mind a living, beating heart. Aside from those crimson eyes that resembled coagulated blood, her whole person was flawlessly white, wearing a lone white dress amidst the crowd in black mourning clothes. She seemed like an existence peeled from the reverse side of the world, silent, cold, and pale. The priest called out to the gods in his heart and recited eulogies, but alas, to no effect. The resurrected corpse now began to move its body, starting from bending the fingers, trying to clench a fist, blinking, and turning the head, as if some unearthly being was adapting to this unfamiliar body. She stared at the swaying chandelier on the ceiling. Then she scanned the crowd in the morning hall. Those who met that gaze trembled all over, covering their mouths and holding their breath. Being stared at by that ominous entity that shouldn't exist or appear in this world made one feel that hanging oneself would be a quicker relief. Finally, the creature actually spat out human words from its mouth. "What is my name?" The entity occupying the body of Evangeline Rosen, after adapting to its new vessel, revealed an extremely satisfied smile. A few days later, the girl finally realized she had transmigrated. She tried hard to recall the cause of her death. She was perfectly healthy, unemployed, and didn't overwork. She wasn't hit by an ice sky truck either. After thinking it over, it was probably just a matter of falling asleep. So, has transmigration become this casual nowadays? They didn't even bother setting up an otherworldly teleportation circle. Whatever, since I'm here, I might as well accept it. There's no point dwelling on it. The important thing is this body in front of me. The original owner's memories were completely absent. This saved her from personality conflicts during the adaptation period. But the problem was, why did she transmigrate right in the middle of a funeral? No wonder those people looked at her as if they had seen a ghost. Thinking from the priest's perspective, this was indeed a scene of a corpse coming back to life. At the time, she only wanted to ask for a name to bluff her way through. Instead, it resulted in a whole day of interrogation from the priest and doctors. Just recalling it gave her a headache. She didn't even know which book she had transmigrated into. The martial arts novels she recently read were of absolutely no help now. Since she knew nothing about the original owner, she could only feign amnesia. Fortunately, there was a maid willing to help her. From the maid, she pieced together some information. This was a novel about transmigrating into a villainess. The servants bowed the moment they saw her and trembled when speaking. Some even fainted right upon seeing her. There was even a maid who begged for mercy as soon as they met and was dragged away on the spot. Just how malicious was the original owner to scare these young girls to such an extent? Please live a little kinder. Not to mention, this body possessed a pair of red eyes. In the worldview of this kind of novel, red was an omen of bad luck. Those with red eyes were destined from birth to be bullied and ostracized, until the male lead casually says, "I think they are quite pretty," and she falls madly in love with him as if electrocuted. Evangeline was the only daughter of Count Rosen. Her mother died early, and the father-daughter relationship was cold. After she came back from the dead, her father didn't even come to take a single look. A father of a villainess like this is either a scumbag or a doting daughter con. It turned out to be the former. She also didn't have a fiancé. Usually, the male lead in this setting is either the Crown Prince or the Duke of the North. But the reality was, the Crown Prince was middle-aged with 2 children. There was no Duke in the North. The Holy Maiden and the Holy Son were nowhere to be found. That was all the information the maid could provide. She decided to look for the original owner's diary. But here came the problem. She was illiterate in this world's language. The maid hesitated for a moment upon hearing this. "I will buy a literacy textbook by tomorrow." After saying that, she fled for her life. To think she ran so fast. Taking this opportunity, she began to explore the mansion. Not in the bedroom, not in the bathroom, not in the living room. She found nothing. Wait, the maid had mentioned during the tour that the original owner had a room that no one was allowed to enter. Was something hidden there? She walked to that door. She tried pulling it, but it didn't budge. Applying force with both hands, the door finally gave way. The momentum threw her back. The door cracked open slightly. She looked up into the depths of the room. A 3-eyed cat with leopard print patterns was crouching quietly in the darkness. All 3 eyes turned to her simultaneously. The maid, Daisy, held back her fear. She volunteered to take care of this monster, but in reality, it was to report to the Count. The monster occupying the late young lady's skin used the excuse of amnesia to inquire about everything regarding Lady Evangeline. From her age and habits to family relations and even dietary preferences. Hearing that the young lady went for a walk at 8 o'clock every day, she dug out the young lady's clothes and put them on. She wanted to become Lady Evangeline. Yet her imitation was completely off. Whether watching maids faint on the spot or hearing agonizing cries for help, she didn't care at all. On the contrary, those red eyes were filled with contempt and disgust, as if looking down at wriggling earthworms on the side of the road. The Lady Evangeline that Daisy knew was not like this. That fragile girl would rather endure illness herself than speak harshly to others. If she really wanted to disguise herself, she shouldn't look at people with that kind of gaze. But suddenly, she brought up the request to learn to read. Daisy agreed to help buy books. However, she quickly realized that it was just an excuse to get rid of her. In that brief moment, she suddenly disappeared. Ultimately, she searched the entire manor, finding the locked door, but there was no key. Yet she was inside, reading casually as if nothing was wrong. So, in order to see more clearly, Daisy held her breath and peeked into the room through the crack in the door, only to find her drawing patterns on the floor with blood from her fingertips, while muttering the word contract. The voice couldn't be heard clearly. Daisy cautiously poked her head out and ended up meeting the gaze of that thing. That was all Daisy had seen. Count Rosen stroked his chin. Runes and a contract drawn with blood. Could it be some kind of witchcraft? He was already disturbed by the thing residing in his daughter's body. Could it be summoning other monsters? All of this originated from his daughter's suicide. The temple refused to host the funeral, and even the burial became a problem. This was what allowed an evil spirit to possess the corpse. What was troublesome was that even holy water couldn't dispel the evil spirit. At his wit's end, he could only continue to monitor her. Just as he wanted to say some words of encouragement to Daisy, he noticed her eyes were still tightly shut. "Why are you keeping your eyes closed?" Daisy instead showed a puzzled expression. "Because I'm scared, of course. Isn't that thing still staring at me?" "Is it staring at me, Lord Count?" The Count suddenly turned his head and immediately met the gaze of countless bloated eyeballs staring at him. Little did they know, the monster they imagined was just an ordinary girl who wanted to survive. She had taken a lot of effort to pull open that room. The room was filled with paintings covered with cloth. It seemed Evangeline was a person who loved to paint, forbidding others from entering, and even using cloth to cover them. The diary was probably on the bookshelf. Although she couldn't read the language of this world, she could just use the process of elimination. Exclude those with overly neat titles. Exclude those as thick as a dictionary. Exclude those with overly regular printed fonts. Just then, she found a book with ink smudge marks. However, the pitch-black cover was somewhat eerie. It completely didn't match the taste of a villainess. When casually flipping through the pages, a slip of paper fell out, a circle combined with geometric patterns. This was 100% a summoning circle. To think a summoning circle was hidden in the diary. She became excited. It seemed this novel was quite old. Making contracts with demons wasn't popular nowadays. Without much hesitation, she decided to draw one. A villainess must have some self-protection ability. It just so happened that there was paint. Although there were many brushes, it felt better to draw this kind of thing with fingers, whether it's an elf or a dragon. Just let whoever come sign the contract. Late at night, she fell fast asleep, and the contracted entity that chose her also arrived. Waking up the next day, there was a three-eyed leopard print cheese cat beside her. Are the cats in this other world all so extraordinary? Looking at this cute and docile little thing, she swallowed her saliva. It should be fine to pet it a little, right? As the maid entered the door, she immediately resumed her villainous persona. Seeing that the maid was different from yesterday's, she didn't think much of it. Perhaps it was a shift system. To get acquainted with the new maid, she broke the ice with a cute topic. "Does the Count's family keep many cats?" The maid replied expressionlessly, "They were all killed off long ago." The maid continued to add, "Because the cats caused an infectious disease." The girl immediately became alert. If that little guy was discovered, it would be disastrous. As a result, the next second, a meow sounded out. The maid looked around. "Is there a cat meowing?" Evangeline feigned calmness. "I didn't hear anything." Strange, it clearly meowed from so close by. She desperately pretended not to hear. "Baby, don't meow. If you cry out and get discovered, you'll die." Fortunately, the maid left without searching the room. It almost gave her a heart attack. She originally thought it was a cat living here. In the blink of an eye, she became someone who picked up a stray cat without the family's consent. But if she just kicked it out, it would die. Its family is probably gone too. Let's have the priest and doctor check it thoroughly before raising it. Surely they wouldn't kill the Count's daughter's pet cat. Just as she went to get the Count's permission, she was denied entry. The butler bowed his head. "Apologies, young lady. The Count is currently busy with official duties and says he cannot see you. If there's anything you need to convey, you can tell me." Evangeline hurriedly put her hands on his shoulders, signaling him to rise. What kind of background did the original owner have to make an old man bow 90 degrees to her? As a result, it startled the butler. She quickly let go. "I just want to keep a cat. Is that not allowed?" The butler looked troubled and rubbed his shoulder. That's not it. Soon, she obtained permission. Originally, she wanted to take it for a checkup, but the butler said it just needed to drink holy water. Since holy water could cure all infectious diseases, why did they still kill the cats? The butler left after confirming the cat drank the holy water. At this time, the maid handed over a collar, hesitating to speak. Other servants might harm the cat. How about embroidering its name on the collar and putting it on? Evangeline immediately accepted the suggestion, but she couldn't read, let alone embroider. Before she could explain, the maid ran away as if fleeing for her life. The maid who promised to buy the literacy book was also nowhere to be found. Seeing the servants trembling, she thought she was a bullying villainess. It turns out she also had the setting of being secretly bullied. I'm sorry, baby, mommy is useless. I really want to learn how to read quickly. This half-hearted iSky transmigration is too much. As a result, she woke up the next day, able to read. Is this a transmigrator's perk? Since I've even learned the text, maybe I can use muscle memory to do embroidery as well. But the finished product was too horrible to look at. She couldn't even read what she had embroidered herself. Just as she was hesitating whether to redo it, the kitten actually meowed, urging her to quickly put the collar on it. What an angelic cat. In her previous life, she couldn't keep a cat due to restrictive conditions. Now she could actually fulfill this wish. She hugged the cat tightly. From today on, your name is Pudding. Late at night, the maid Hina was very anxious. As long as I have that, my sister can be saved. Such precious holy water to be wasted so easily. Do you want it? Hina turned her head and looked around, but there was no one. There was only the cat grooming its fur. That was the cat lady Evangeline kept. If you want that bottle of water, you can take it. I will tell you what to do. The cat opened its eyes. Three eyes stared fixedly at Hina. In this most cliché romance story, the god that should least awaken had opened its eyes. It scared the original owner's father into fleeing overnight, fleeing in a panic, haphazardly grabbing a few clothes. The people in the mansion all said that the count had been trembling these past few days, muttering that countless eyes were staring at him from the dark, staring at everyone. Even a maid named Daisy told everyone she met that she was blind and never dared to open her eyes. Even when someone recommended she go serve in another noble family, she flatly refused and went straight to the convent. The empty mansion's affairs were entrusted to the butler. The count could also handle family-related matters properly in his territory. So right now, the butler only needed to be responsible for one thing: the monster wearing Lady Evangeline's skin. Hina's mission was to report everything about that thing to the butler. Since Daisy met with her misfortune, no one was willing to serve as the young lady's personal maid. They had to raise the salary. Hina, who urgently needed money, took up the job. I heard a cat's meow. The young lady asked if there were any cats in the house, and I answered that they were all dead. They were clearly all disposed of, so why can we still hear a cat meow? It seemed the butler couldn't hear the cat's meow. Instead, he was worried about the maid who was fine just a moment ago, but had returned seemingly mentally unstable in such a short time. He asked Hina if she needed a recommendation letter. Although this was a kind proposal, what reached Hina's ears was only the echoing wail of the cat. The butler handed over the written note, but Hina shook her head. She would continue working. Although she couldn't hear, she could manage by lip reading. Hina had a younger sister. For the sake of her sick sister, she had to hold on to this job. So the butler followed the count's orders, telling Hina to feed the cat with holy water to confirm if it was also a monster. Hina paled in shock upon hearing this. If they had holy water, her sister could be cured. Such a precious thing to be wasted on a cat. Do you want it? Hina, finally able to hear a human voice, looked around, but saw only the cat kept by Lady Evangeline. Could it be the cat speaking? If you want it, I'll give it to you. I will tell you what to do. The cat opened its third eye. A monster. It's a monster. Hina ran away. I must tell the butler. Maybe I can get a reward. But Hina stopped in her tracks. A mere reward couldn't buy holy water at all. For her sister, she was already prepared to pay any price. Thus, she turned back. Following the cat's instructions, she swapped the holy water. Lady Evangeline had no reaction to the holy water. Only Hina realized that the real holy water was effective against the cat, but she pretended to know nothing and just obediently fulfilled this cat's other demands. It would close one eye in front of people pretending to be an ordinary cat. Perhaps because she served it well, Hina could no longer hear the cat's meows. Moreover, the pay was very high. After deducting living expenses, quite a lot was left. Therefore, after work, she could always splurge in the market, buying snacks her sister loved to eat. Having drunk the holy water, her sister's health gradually recovered. This dreamlike time was enough to make her easily forget the experience of serving a weird cat and a terrifying young lady during the day. So from now on, for the sake of her sister, she still planned to do her best to serve the young lady well. Even if that young lady was currently facing an eerie book, letting out bone-chilling laughter. However, the style suddenly changed. Evangeline was feeling smug. She was now a super transmigrator who could read. Since she could understand the text, it was time to flip through the original owner's diary and casually look for summoning spells, to summon an elf or a dragon or something, to experience an overpowered life. As a result, after flipping for a long time, she found out this was Evangeline's mother's diary. 20 years ago, Count Rosen proposed to her, but her father grounded her, saying he was coveting the Duke's family's wealth. She defied her family's objections and insisted on marrying, eventually being disowned by her relatives. But a year later, she regretted it. I really should have listened to my father back then. When she saw the summoning spell, the translator just had to malfunction. The patch stopped halfway. The only recognizable parts were defile the earth and personally draw a circle. What do thorns and grapefruit mean? Plant beans and get red beans? What on earth is all this? Feeling a headache, she decided to wait for the translation patch to update. Anyway, the document wouldn't grow legs and run away. As a result, the next day, it really did run away. The paper placed on the table vanished out of thin air. The diary was perfectly intact, but only the paper was missing. She searched the whole room, but couldn't find it. Hina, who entered my room yesterday. Hina thought about it carefully. It should be Danube. Speaking of which, he hasn't shown up today. Where's that guy now? Daring to steal my stuff. Let's see if I don't wring his neck. Meanwhile, Danube used his own blood to draw runes on the ground. Now he just needed to wait until sunset. At the cost of that girl's life, he could summon a demon. The servant risked his life to steal her summoning circle, thinking he would be safe hiding deep in the slums, until the door was kicked open on the spot by Evangeline. The unhurried footsteps sounded like the pendulum of the Grim Reaper. The servant's hands trembled. He remembered he still had a knife. The next second, the blade slashed across his throat. Blood splattered 3 feet. He collapsed in the summoning circle he had drawn himself. After all, dying was easier than facing her. Half a day ago, the man had prepared everything needed for the sacrifice, including the tied-up girl lying on the ground. Kana shed tears of despair. She only wanted to feed that kitty some snacks. It was the one she often saw when her sister came back. But the next second, she fell victim to his cruel hands. Danube stopped in front of the sacrifice and crouched down. Sorry to keep you waiting. The time for the sacrifice has finally come. In the eyes of ordinary people, this might just be kids playing house. But Danube, who served the Count's family, immediately saw through the reality of the spell. Evangeline Rosen, who had hanged herself, was resurrected. If not the work of a demon, who could do such a thing? His foolish colleagues only yelled about ghost possessions. A bunch of trash. The key was to figure out who summoned the demon. Only Danube realized the underlying reason. Evangeline Rosen's maternal family is the Duke Hasekin family. Count Rosen used his daughter's frailty since childhood as an excuse to obtain massive medical funding from the Duke's estate. But if Evangeline died, all that money would be gone. So, it must be Count Rosen who made a deal with a demon to resurrect his daughter. That damn Count puts on a facade of kindness. But to the bone, he's just a greedy, useless noble. Danube had long seen through the Count's dirty intentions. Just because he saw that document stating exorbitant funds while cleaning the office, he was beaten half to death by the Count. Danube wanted to use this sacrifice to become a noble much more respectable than the likes of Count Rosen. He pressed the blade against Kana's neck. Since it was a sacrifice, it had to be prepared according to the demon's taste. Demons definitely love bloody prey. With a sharp blade sliced, beads of blood formed a line and flowed down slowly. He was full of interest in this delicate, almost artistic operation. When he chanted the spell again, a loud bang shook the house, kicking up a cloud of dust. Through the dust, a figure could be seen approaching. Entering his sight was a blindingly white dress that looked like a nightgown. Then his gaze shifted to hair that was equally bloodless, pale as snow. His eyes finally met those scarlet pupils. Danube gasped in a breath of cold air. Filled with awe, he bowed in worship, welcoming that angel of light who toured the earth and descended to the mortal realm, Evangeline Rosen. The sound of a horn came from somewhere unknown. Evangeline didn't expect the commotion to be so big. That shabby door shattered with a light kick. Walking into the room, she saw Danube holding a knife to the neck of a girl who was tied up tightly. Did the thief evolve into a human trafficker? Behind her, Hina shouted Kana. It seemed they knew each other. Evangeline's anger reached its peak. I will never let anyone who dares to touch my Hina's person go. But first, she had to get him away from that girl. Danube called out her name, tremblingly. This heinous criminal is actually afraid of me? Is it a guilty conscience because his crimes were exposed? My summoning circle. Did you find it handy to use? Are you saying you're the owner of that summoning circle? Yes. So aren't I here to find you now? Tell me whatever you want. I'll grant you anything. Right now, I have to pretend to actually agree to his terms. Danube excitedly made his wish. Make me a super billionaire. Let me lie flat and live effortlessly for the rest of my life. Evangeline didn't bring any money with her. She could only paint a pipe dream for now. All right, how about Count Rosen? I'll make you the count. Danube stood frozen in place. Did I paint too big a pipe dream? As soon as the hostage is rescued, I will immediately send him to prison. Count Rosen. Not bad. Exactly what I want. It seems. It would be quite good for me to seize that damn Count's title. Then let's seal this deal immediately. Just as he lunged to stab Kana, Evangeline seized the opportunity and struck the back of his head hard. Danube instantly lost consciousness and fell heavily to the ground. She had meant to aim for the back of his neck. After confirming the man wouldn't get up again, Hina hurriedly ran to her sister, struggling to untie the knots on Kana's hands and feet. Don't be afraid. Sister will untie you right away. What should I do? It won't come undone. Why won't it come undone? Hina's face was covered in tears. Her hands trembled like poplar leaves. Step aside. Evangeline walked over. With just a few touches on the ropes, she easily freed her hands. You were standing too far. Of course you couldn't untie it. It's all right now. Hina pulled her sister into a tight hug. Are you okay? How'd you get caught? Didn't I tell you not to go out? You've only just recovered. I'm sorry, sister. I didn't expect to be caught by someone like this while waiting for you. I'm also sorry, Kana. It's so good that you're okay. Thank goodness we weren't too late. Seeing their heartwarming interaction, her nose stung. Although she also wanted to hug them together, for someone famous as a villainess, joining in now would ruin her persona, right? Your name is Kana, right? How should we deal with Danube? Should we lock him in the underground dungeon forever? Only now, looking closely, did she realize that the wound on Kana's neck was deeper than expected. How is your neck? Kana responded gratefully. It's fine. The awakened Danube picked up his dagger and stabbed down without hesitation. Hina hurriedly ran towards the young lady. A completely unexpected scene unfolded before their eyes. They originally thought Danube would lunge at the young lady with a knife, but it turned out the one who got stabbed was himself. He then collapsed inside the summoning circle drawn with his own blood. Evangeline blinked in confusion. Is he that unwilling to atone for his sins? Some criminals choose to commit suicide to escape punishment. It seems the other world is the same. Sorry, he's dead as a doornail. I was going to let him face the trial of justice. Kana said it was okay. This was enough for her. The girl's eyes sparkled, her bright smile as refreshing as if she had cast off all her worries. Thank you for saving me. Evangeline felt pleased with herself. Saving people like this was indeed very meaningful. Her heart felt warm. Why does it feel a bit hot? Hina reminded, young lady, it's on fire here. Shouldn't we escape quickly? The firelight illuminated the surroundings. The three quickly escaped the house. Could it be that Danube summoned a fire spirit? Damn it. When I was drawing the summoning circle on the ground with my finger, I even got pierced by a wooden splinter and bled. I couldn't even read the incantation and nothing appeared. Now, even the spell has been burned. Is my overpowered life just gone like this? Rusty walls, a moldy room, cold soup, a narrow, hard bed, and a 2-span wide window. This was Kana's entire world. Born weak and sickly, encountered dystocia at birth. Her mother passed away during childbirth, and her father died of overwork to raise money for Kana's medical bills. Now this burden fell onto the shoulders of her sister, Hina. Despite having devoured the lives of two close family members, Kana's health still showed no improvement. Nowadays, she could only stay bedridden all day, let alone raising her hands. Even breathing had become difficult. She could have told her sister that she had no hope and it was better to give up. But she wanted to live. She wanted to continue this lingering life. Her sister called that hope. Kana, do you see the people outside? Sister believes that one day, you can also walk freely like them. Sister will make it happen for you. So let's not give up. From the moment she heard those words, that single small window became special to Kana. In her day-to-day life, the only thing that changed was the scenery outside the window. Kana integrated herself into that scenery, clinging tightly to the hope her sister spoke of, until one day, a new picture was added outside the window. And so, a miracle arrived. From now on, she would no longer suffer from illness. The first emotion she felt wasn't joy, nor was it happiness, but anger. Father and sister had wasted their lives just for this one bottle of water. Her nowhere-to-be-placed resentment pointed towards Lady Evangeline, who bestowed the holy water. However, accompanied by a loud bang, the door was smashed to pieces. That existence, worthy of the name of an angel, reached out a helping hand to her once again. That woman was exactly Evangeline Rosen, who had given her sister the holy water. While Evangeline gazed at Kana, other eyes were also staring intently at him. Dozens of eyes bloomed in the surroundings. Should we imprison him forever? Summoned by the man, Evangeline was actually asking Kana for her opinion. How does your neck feel? It's fine. The man's body began to creak and move. He tried to resist that invisible pressure controlling his movements. His arm was forced to bend inward. As his resistance to the pain weakened, the knife moved without hesitation. The man pierced his own throat with his own hands. This scene was witnessed by countless eyes, except for Evangeline. Sorry, he's dead. It's okay. This is enough for me. Suicide is a heinous crime. There is absolutely no mercy for those who discard the life bestowed by the gods. The man abandoned by Evangeline would be spurned even by the gods. The only destination for that soul was hell. The fires of hell came to welcome that man. A scorching wave of heat instantly swept across Kana's face. That heat was just like her sister's embrace, as warm as the midsummer sun. At the same time, a black-haired knight looked toward the residential building engulfed in raging flames in the distance. Soon, the people in the town were drawn over by the firelight, seeing more and more people gathering. The night order also rushed to the scene. It seemed someone had reported the incident. True to the worldview of a romance novel, white uniforms replacing armor paired with pure white cloaks looked exceptionally gorgeous. Among them, one gentleman was the most dazzling. He was heading toward Evangeline. The girl was stunned. He was unbelievably handsome. So handsome, you could invent memories out of thin air. Like how two people clearly got into trouble together, but the teacher only scolded you. My apologies. I am the captain of the Polaro's Knights, Gabriel. Wait, a handsome, cold, black-haired knight? Could this guy be the male lead? He was the first to ask, Young lady, why are you here? This doesn't seem like a suitable place for a stroll. Evangeline thought, I really do look like a villainess. He's already suspicious of me the moment we meet. The next second, Kana stepped in front of the young lady. Hino warned her it was dangerous, but Kana still refused to move aside. This knight is questioning Milady. Evangeline was deeply moved. At a time like this, she couldn't hide behind a child who'd already suffered enough. I'm not here for a walk. I came looking for someone. The servant who lived in this burning house was mine, but he's already dead. You needn't concern yourself. He had it coming. Gabriel fell silent for a moment. Could you explain in more detail? Evangeline agonized over where to begin. If she said Danube summoned a fire spirit and then killed himself, would he believe her? While she hesitated, Kana stepped forward. I'll explain. Milady's servant kidnapped me. After my sister asked for help, Milady came to save me. He never came out, so I assume he died. Looking at the situation, that seems most likely. The male lead seemed to believe Kana's words too. His attitude toward her was far gentler than toward Evangeline. Wait, no way. Countless romance novel covers flashed through her mind. The female lead with crimson wavy curls and the black-haired male lead. Oh no. So Kana was the heroine. That kidnapping incident just now had obviously been the male lead's hero saves the beauty scene, because she had stuck her nose into it. The romantic first meeting between the male and female leads had been ruined. But even if they were only characters in a book, she still couldn't just stand by and do nothing. There are no more questions, right? Milady is tired. We'll be taking our leave first. The conversation ended coldly. That attitude was a little too indifferent for the male lead. The original heroine had actually sided with the villainess. This was completely the villainous-possessed route. She could only leave one last line before turning away. "If you run into trouble, come find me. It'd be great to earn another favor." Little did she know, Gabriel was staring at the mouth of the alley where the pure white doll had disappeared. At first, he had thought there was a statue standing among the crowd. In a slum like this, something carved with such exquisite beauty should not have existed. The reason he hadn't recognized it as a person was because it had shown no trace of life whatsoever. Yet that object, which should have seemed utterly lifeless, had looked at him with scarlet eyes. Red lips spoke human words. The instant he saw that eerie sight, Gabriel was nearly speechless. He forced himself to remain calm and speak with the woman. Just as he'd expected, she was not human. When speaking of her servant's death, there was not the slightest warmth in her eyes. Just as humans don't care about ants they pass by. But toward the maid named Kana, she had shown concern. Perhaps because she had drawn the attention of a non-human being, that maid did not seem normal either. That blind, fervent expression on her face was practically the look of someone gazing upon a god she worshipped. His subordinates called out, "Captain." The fire went out on its own before we could extinguish it. It didn't spread to the surrounding area. It only burned this one house. More than that, we found a corpse at the fire scene. Even in death, the body remained charred black. Its limbs were shattered and severed, yet it looked strangely like an angel. Behind the mutilated corpse, scorch marks spread across the ground like rain. Behind the head was a luminous ring, like a halo encircling the body. Wings formed from ash had broken before they could ever take flight. A fallen thing destined to plunge into a bottomless abyss. The painter muttered to himself about a mission. "This is the mission I was given. I must complete this painting. This holy angel. The halo above its head is so faint, like a candle about to go out. It could disappear at any moment." The man had once been praised as a genius artist, but because his work didn't suit noble tastes, he had quickly fallen from grace and into disgrace. Now he had sunk to the point of living off his wife. He wandered around in hopes of finding inspiration, and accidentally discovered a strange flame. After the fire, bright as the sun, went out among the ashes, he found a sacred angel burned pitch black, with only its torso remaining. Inspiration exploded inside him. He rushed straight home, grabbed his brush, and without even sketching a draft, thought only of finishing the painting before the memory faded. Yet it still felt like something was missing. Pigment alone could not perfectly capture it. When his gaze swept over the palette knife, he picked it up without hesitation and stabbed it into his thigh. Through the sharp pain, blood soaked through his trousers. He dipped his brush in the blood and continued painting the angel's backlight. At last it was perfect. On the carriage ride back, Evangeline suddenly asked, "Would you like me to arrange a room for you at the manor? You'd be scared going home alone, right? I'll take care of you." She was asking Kana, not Hina. Hina desperately wanted her sister to refuse, but feared that hinting too much would only provoke anger. The way Danube had died was still vivid in her mind. What was even harder to understand was that Kana had seemed satisfied by that disgusting, horrifying death. "Can my sister stay too?" "Of course. Can we choose the room ourselves too?" "Pick whichever you like." Kana's excited chatter made Hina feel a little unfamiliar with her. Kana had always been brave since childhood, but was she opening up because Milady had saved her? But the butler knew Kana had been sick. If he saw she was perfectly fine now, he might realize they had stolen holy water. "Milady, may we have the room next to yours?" Hina was startled. That room had belonged to the Countess when she was alive. "The person is gone now. It's fine if it's empty. The furniture is all there, so it'll be convenient. I'll explain it to the Count." Hina couldn't argue. She could only pray that before the Count threw them out, the butler wouldn't discover anything. After the two sisters changed into their sleepwear, Kana, who had seemed to be resting with her eyes closed, suddenly spoke. "I can hear Milady walking upstairs." Hina listened carefully, but heard nothing. "Anyway, we really picked the right room. I like it a lot. The bed is big enough for me and sister to sleep together. And did you see Milady's cat earlier? I'd seen it at home before, so it belongs to Milady's household." What a coincidence. Hina didn't dare say that cat was a monster. Just as she was about to fall asleep, Kana suddenly said softly, "Sister, thank you for coming to get me today. I was really scared." Hina tightly held her sister's hand. Thinking back to earlier, she felt guilty for having found her sister's forced calmness strange. No matter what Kana did, to Hina, she would always just be her cutest little sister. Meanwhile, Evangeline made up her mind. From now on, her goal was to get along well with Kana. If she got close to the male lead, she would only become a clingy, villainous side character. She had no desire to fall in love with someone from a book. The best shortcut to escaping a villainess's fate was to devote herself fully to the heroine. No matter what happened, she had to protect her well. To that end, she wrote a letter to the Count, asking that the sisters be allowed to continue staying here. She had clearly seen the Count's room still lit up last night, but the butler claimed he was away on business. Worried that the letter alone would be coldly rejected, she took out the Countess's diary as well. She attached the pages privately filled with curses toward the Count. If that didn't prick his conscience, nothing would. With this, she could keep the heroine by her side as much as she wanted. She could leisurely and happily enjoy life as a villainess. But just as she was thinking about how to raise the heroine in the future, the male lead, Gabriel, suddenly came to visit, saying he was there to apologize. Evangeline thought he had finally grown a conscience and was concerned about the heroine who'd been kidnapped and was just about to call Kana out. But he didn't seem to care at all. You mean the one who was kidnapped? She doesn't look badly injured. Evangeline inwardly complained. This male lead really only cares about appearances. Every time I see the scar on Kana's neck, do you know how upset Hina and I feel? I originally wanted to find holy water to heal her, but Kana said she wanted to keep the scar, so I could only tearfully indulge her. Gabriel explained that he had come this time because he wanted to hear Miss Rosen's opinion. You may be accused of shamefully forging Danube's death. Evangeline was dumbfounded. What kind of ridiculous development was this now? When she saw the male lead pull out a sheet of paper from his chest and show it to her, she was even more shocked. No matter who drew it, the quality was terrible. Gabriel said it was his drawing. Though it's rather crude, please bear with it. Looking at it this way, don't you think it resembles an angel? Sorry, she did not get it at all. No matter how she looked at it, it was just a blob. At the scene, they had found Danube's corpse. Some people had started spreading rumors everywhere that Danube had received God's blessing. Ridiculous. What right did Danube have to receive a blessing? He kidnapped Arcana and didn't want to pay the price, so he ran from it through suicide, the bastard. At first, it only circulated in a small circle, but then some painter turned that scene into a painting and presented it to the temple. As a result, the temple also began buzzing with debate. Someone even suggested Danube's body be placed in the temple. Orders came down from above to reinvestigate the case, so that Danube's death would not remain obscure. The problem was if Danube was recognized as having received God's blessing, then Miss Rosen would instead be accused of fabricating his death. Evangeline could hardly believe it. Was this another case of the original story forcibly pushing the plot forward? Miss, is everything you told me true? Even the male lead had started doubting her. She had asked the sisters before, and people in this world seemed not to know that spirits existed. If she said now that Danube had summoned a fire spirit, who would believe that? So she asked back, do you think I'm lying? Gabriel believed Danube had not received God's blessing, but his death was indeed suspicious. I want to help you. Evangeline didn't understand why the male lead was trying to show off in front of a villainess. May I dare ask you something? The male lead lowered his eyes. Was he blushing? With her years of experience reading romance fantasy novels, this was obviously a flag. She was desperately trying to escape the villainous fate, and instead the male lead had fallen for the villainess. It seemed she had underestimated the power of a villainous setup. Did she really have to date the male lead? He was just a paper person while she was a living, breathing human. The urge to cut him off made Evangeline blurt out, I'm not interested in you. Little did she know, Gabriel had already guessed that the young lady had no interest in people. That's all right. I'm simply curious about you. The male lead spoke such embarrassingly cheesy lines, yet his expression did not change in the slightest. She, on the other hand, was getting goosebumps just listening. Did blood even run in that guy's veins, or was it syrup? The romance fantasy world was terrifying. Getting back on topic, she explained that she had gone to find Danube not because Kana had been kidnapped, but because he had stolen something of hers and run away. When she chased after him, she found Kana tied up there. It was this circular pattern, a summoning circle. As for what exactly he was summoning, I don't know. Probably an angel or something. The moment those words fell, silence blanketed the room. Everything around them seemed to tense, as though peering into Evangeline's expression. Birds suspended their descent. Petals curled back into buds, as if retreating from the wind. When the orchestra stopped playing that grand ensemble, it felt as though only heartbeats remained in the world. Are you so surprised because of me? How stupid. How overconfident. I have no interest in you. Fire rose in eyes that had once been indifferent. Her crimson lips twisted as they spat out words of contempt. Gabriel couldn't even speak properly. Before he could force out a reply, his breathing had already grown ragged. She agreed with that. Would a human take interest in a swarm of ants crawling in a garden? The fact that she hadn't casually crushed them to death out of mercy was something they should be grateful for. Even if she accidentally stepped on a whole cluster, she wouldn't even notice. Naturally, that could not be considered a sin. Evangeline had become angry precisely because insignificant ants had barged into her house. So Gabriel hurriedly explained, "I'm only curious about you." Though that curiosity carried an unpleasant tinge of negativity. The mere fact that he had drawn emotion out of Evangeline was enough to excite him. It was as if he had seen flowers blooming on an old, dried, leafless tree. Flowers that should never have existed there. Gabriel looked toward the Rosen Manor. The mansion was gloomy, utterly out of place in the bright midday afternoon. There should have been many servants, yet strangely, not a single person could be seen. The silence was eerie. Only the cherry tree blooming in the courtyard was unusually vivid. Who knew what sort of fertilizer had been used on it? When he cast his gaze toward the cherry tree again, the doll hanging from it had already disappeared. Could what he had seen just now have been nothing more than an illusion caused by falling petals? Inside the carriage, Gabriel was in disbelief. Evangeline had hanged herself? It was absurd and laughable. Perhaps it was because of those strange words he had heard before coming. While gathering information about Evangeline, he had heard that a priest once claimed to have seen the dead Evangeline rise again. Yet there was no record in the temple of Evangeline's funeral. Instead, it was the priest originally responsible for the funeral rites who had hanged himself. It was said he had not even left a suicide note. People around him said the priest had, while alive, extorted bereaved families of suicides and embezzled temple funds. So people guessed he had died under divine punishment. Raphael curiously asked the captain, "Do you know what that unburned paper meant?" Hold reverence in your heart, bow in worship, and welcome the bright angel who tours the earth and descends into the mortal world. Gabriel recalled a fragment of their earlier conversation, probably something meant to summon an angel. He had once heard of summoning circles that could grant wishes, which had been popular long ago, until they were purged on a large scale, along with those who manipulated such arts. As for when exactly that happened, he wasn't sure. "Evangeline, what do you know about curses?" The moment he spoke the woman's name, the carriage suddenly lurched violently. The swaying carriage barely managed to right itself and stop. Raphael pushed the door open and rushed out to argue. "Didn't you say you were good at driving?" The coachman apologized again and again. A cat suddenly darted out just now. Gabriel spoke up to reassure him. "My attendant and I are unharmed, so don't worry. It would be better if I were hurt than if we had hit someone else." Only then did the coachman let out a sigh of relief. Gabriel fell into thought. The carriage had nearly overturned precisely while they were discussing curses. Was that really just a coincidence? Recently, rumors had been quietly spreading about a bizarre holy painting hung in the temple. It was said that after seeing the painting, a young lady had fainted, then in her dream had an audience with the sun god. The high priest praised it lavishly and bestowed a reward upon the painter. There were even rumors that the painting could distinguish heretics like a holy gatekeeper. It was said that even a knight named Michel had been unable to leave the front of that painting. Rumors passed from mouth to mouth, swelling more and more with embellishment. In a remote convent in the countryside, the nuns saw Daisy walking toward them and immediately quieted their laughter and chatter. One of them secretly reminded her, "Even if the priest summons you tonight, you absolutely can't just submit, understand? That man is infamous for being a pervert, especially toward newcomers." Daisy decided to hide in the library until dawn that night, so no one could be sent to her room to harass her. It had already been 3 weeks since she escaped from the Rosen Manor. She had finally managed to get away from the monster occupying Miss Evangeline's body. She absolutely did not want to stir up more trouble now. The clock hand had already reached 2. Daisy thought it should be safe to go back now, so she stood up from her seat. But the moment she opened the door, she saw 2 men waiting outside. "Did you enjoy your late-night wandering, sister? The priest has something to tell you." Before Daisy could speak, the men dragged her away by force. As they walked, the two men talked. Will father recover once he sees this girl? Maybe. He did always especially like women. When they arrived at the priest's door, the men shoved her inside. When father gets better, he'll let you out. Then they shut the door. Inside came sounds of suffering. I have to complete the missing part. I have to. The moment Daisy saw what the priest looked like, she instinctively took a step back. Though the outline was unclear, Daisy recognized the pattern on the paper at once. How could she not? That was unmistakably the pattern drawn by the monster wearing Mrs. Skin. A survival horror tale, seen through others' eyes. The heroine was actually an evil god descending into the world. Maid Daisy had finally escaped that monster, only to be dragged back into the abyss once more. The priest had gone mad, kneeling on the floor and trembling as he copied something over and over. Daisy recognized it at a glance. It was that summoning circle. Terror surged over her like a tide, dragging her back to that page, to the Rosen Manor, where countless eyes had opened all around her. No, she had finally escaped. She had to stop the summoning immediately. No matter who it was, she had to kill them. Daisy grabbed a nearby statue in both hands, raised it high over her head, and smashed it down hard. When she let go, the stone statue of the sun god Rahel had split in two. Hearing the noise, the men outside assumed the priest had started and pretended not to know. They had clearly known what would happen when they locked her in there. Blood pouring from the priest's head began soaking into the drawing. Before she even realized it, the blood had already followed the pressure marks of the pen like grooves, filling the picture with color. Daisy realized the terrible thing she had done. Her breathing grew ragged. She had only wanted to stop him. What she was found out. The crime of killing a priest was far more serious than killing an ordinary person. To dare kill one beloved by God meant execution once discovered. Now she had nowhere to run unless someone offered a hand. Need help? A dripping voice suddenly sounded by her ear. Daisy trembled all over and looked up. Black hair like a swamp filled her vision. Behind her, where there should have been no one, stood a man with shining eyes. Sharp teeth and a vivid red tongue flickered into view. Daisy cried out in terror. "Who are you?" The man immediately covered her mouth with one hand. "Quiet now. How about this? If you calm down nicely, I'll let go." The man loosened his hand. "I came because I smelled that guy. Why are you the only one here?" Daisy fell silent. What exactly was this thing? It seemed he didn't intend to hurt her. That guy, did he mean someone she knew? The one with lots of eyes. His name is Puroros. At the word eyes, Daisy shuddered all over. Was the eyes? He spoke of the things she had seen in the Rosen Manor. "You know him, right? I've got business with that guy. You'll have to take me there." Daisy absolutely did not want to return to that place. "No can do. Didn't you already make a wish? I showed up at a bargain price. You should at least fulfill this much if you want it to be worth it for me." The man snapped his fingers. At the same time, the dead priest's body suddenly began to move. That scene made Daisy think of Evangeline's resurrection. The nightmare of that day was replaying itself in an even more hideous form. Honestly, you use something like that as an offering? Unless it's some starving lunatic like me, no one would even spare it a second glance. Oh dear, I almost forgot the after-service. The two men guarding outside walked into the room. Before they could even panic over the unfamiliar intruder, bloodlines appeared across their throats, and their heads fell cleanly to the floor. What was eerie was that the headless bodies did not collapse. Instead, they picked up the rolling heads from the ground and put them back onto each other's necks. The two mismatched heads fit perfectly. After witnessing the scene with her own eyes, Daisy couldn't stop retching. The man laughed in satisfaction and applauded. "This is wonderful. Perfect. The thing you're looking for should be over there." After confirming the location of the manor, the man nodded. "That's right. The smell is strong. Has that guy settled down there?" "Maybe." The man waved goodbye. "Call me if you need help. But next time, I'll be collecting a price." At that moment, Daisy only wanted to flee this place, afraid that those eyes would fall on her again. She looked toward the cherry tree in full bloom. Ever since Miss hanged herself from that tree, its flowers had never ceased blooming and falling. Then a voice behind her asked, "Where are you going?" The coachman turned his head to stare at Daisy. "Where are you going?" Daisy did not answer for a long time. That voice, with utterly unchanged tone and speed, kept repeating the question, as though it would never stop until it got an answer. She stole a glance, the thin crimson line across the coachman's throat. After repeatedly weighing the day of that nightmare against today, she finally settled on a destination, to the temple. Meanwhile, Evangeline encountered a talking black wolf. Help me. A werewolf? Then that would make the male lead Gabriel. So this one must be the villainous second male lead. In Evangeline's mind, an entire romantic drama had already begun playing on its own. The horror story heroine who could make her words come true after reviving was actually just a novel-loving girl who wanted to survive. She thought the werewolf second male lead she picked up had come for the heroine, not knowing that her pet cat was the real prey he had locked onto. Taking advantage of the cover of night, he broke into the Rosen Manor. Sensing an intruder, Puroros opened his third eye. Andres floated in midair and mocked him. "What are you doing here? Playing with those cold-blooded creatures that can't understand speech." "Really?" And here I was still guessing. The next second, Puroros transformed into a round mass, and a paw covered in countless eyes came lunging forward. And that led to the scene just now. Evangeline had assumed the talking wolf was a handsome werewolf man and instantly imagined a whole romance plot. She guessed he was the second male lead. Kana was being bullied by the villainous Evangeline and secretly crying alone in the garden when she happened to discover an injured wolf. Usually, in plots like this, the wolf turns out to be a beast man being hunted by slave traders, right? Kind-hearted Kana carefully tended to him. Since he was an animal, physical contact would naturally happen. Then afterward, he would transform into a handsome man and have a flirty, ambiguous phase with the heroine. "Didn't you say I was cute? Then why won't you pet me?" Lines like that. The sudden burst of romance inspiration made her so excited she could barely contain herself. Wait, had she accidentally stolen the heroine's love line again? Just as she was about to call Kana over, the wolf behind her let out a weak cry for help, and she did feel a little guilty. She was just worrying over how to move this heavy fellow when, in the blink of an eye, the wolf was suddenly inside the room. What was going on? "Did you do that?" The big wolf answered energetically, "Yes." So beastmen in another world could use magic too. In that case, she couldn't just ignore him anymore. At the very least, she should do some emergency treatment first. But because of the fur, she couldn't tell how serious the injuries really were. The wolf asked her to wait a moment, and in the blink of an eye, he turned human. This way you can see more clearly, right? His injuries were worse than she'd imagined. All over his body were wounds from blades, slashes, and punctures. Simple first aid wouldn't be enough. She was hesitating over whether to call a doctor when Pudding arrived carrying holy water. He rubbed against her skirt coquettishly, then spat out the bottle of holy water as if asking for praise. Evangeline couldn't help marveling. Was her Pudding an angel descended from heaven? Other people's cats brought home cockroaches. Her child brought home holy water. Wonderful. Good job. But just as she softened from Pudding's affectionate behavior, an uneasy thought suddenly rose in her mind. Pudding, wasn't he a little too smart for an ordinary cat? Could this child also be a beast man? For now, she set that issue aside. First, she had to deal with the patient in front of her. Ever since Pudding appeared, Andres had shrunk up into a tight ball in fright. "Here, drink up." Seeing Andres looked unwilling, Evangeline had no choice but to take measures. She forcibly pried open his mouth and poured the holy water down his throat. "You can't be picky. You'll heal faster if you drink this. Even if it tastes awful, bear with it a little." Andres only struggled symbolically at first, then stopped resisting altogether. "Oh, right. What's your name?" Not answering. Well, if he was an escaped beast man, it really might not be convenient to say his name. "All right then. Since your paws have such a cute jelly-like feel, I'll call you Jelly," Andres muttered under his breath. "That's way too mushy." After night fell, all the servants except those on night duty had already gotten off work and left. Night staff had to draw all the curtains and extinguish the lights, except for the Count's study and the third floor, before their work for the day was considered done. The night duty areas rotated, and today it was Oliver's turn to handle the fourth floor. A co-worker who had gone to the fourth floor before comforted him, saying it wasn't that scary. And Miss Evangeline never came out of her room. He only needed to focus on finishing his work. But starting a while ago, Oliver had kept hearing painful gasping sounds. He forced himself not to pay attention and moved through the corridor by lamplight. Each time he extinguished a lamp, the sound seemed to draw closer, mixing with the noise of some thick liquid squirming into a bizarre chorus. Oliver had barely taken one step when liquid seeping from beneath the door had already pooled on the floor. Its color was an unnaturally dark red. Oliver's heart sank violently. Startled, he stumbled back several steps. At that moment, a hand appeared behind him and steadied him. "Are you all right? If you fall backward, there are stairs there." Nights are dangerous. If you're awake, you should go back. Oliver answered, okay, and thanked the person. But when he entered the first-floor office, the servant on duty, Lantana, angrily demanded, why are you so late? You're the last one to return your lamp. I am exhausted. Oliver didn't understand how he could possibly be the last one. That maid whose name tag says Kana still hasn't gotten off work, has she? What are you talking about? You're the last one. There's no such person on tonight's duty roster. The inhuman thing, wandering the Rosen Manor at night, never carried a lamp. The horror that crushes all things, the heroine, had poured an entire bottle of holy water down her pet demon's throat. The werewolf dared to be angry, but not to speak. He could only vomit blood in secret late at night. Every violent fit of coughing made Danube, no, the wounded creature, retch up chunks of organs and flesh in agony. The wounds made by the cat's claws had healed within hours, but the holy water Evangeline had fed him had utterly destroyed his internal organs. Clearly, if he had just lifted a finger, she shouldn't even have been able to touch a single hair on him. But inside that being's palm, he couldn't break free at all. Even without any force pinning him down, his body had gone rigid with the instinctive certainty that moving would cost him his life. The existence dwelling inside Evangeline's body was profoundly strange. Though it wore a human skin and behaved in human ways, it made no real effort to conceal how abnormal it was. Its presence transcended comprehension. Mere eye contact was enough to suffocate one with terror. If not for divine power, how could it make Andres submit and make Puroros fawn and act cute like a cat? And yet it definitely could not be a god. Whoever had summoned it had called forth something truly incredible. Even after centuries of acquaintance, Pudding showed not the slightest concern. Quiet down. Lord Evangeline is about to be woken up. Unless you want another bottle of holy water. At that moment, the bedroom door was pushed open ever so lightly. A single yellow glowing eye appeared in the crack. Kana lowered her voice. You two are being so loud we can hear you downstairs. Big sister will get scared. Could you please be quieter? Pudding complained. See? Even Kana, whom Lady Evangeline dotes on, says so. Jelly covered his wound in grievance. Honestly, after hearing all that, it somehow made him, the injured one, seem like the guilty party. Early the next morning, Evangeline woke groggily, feeling as though a ghost had pinned her down in her sleep. She'd been kept awake all night by wailing and howling, and hadn't slept well at all. What ghost could there possibly be in a romance fantasy world? She wondered whether she was still dreaming. Only when she felt the warmth of the cat beside her pillow did she realize this was reality. But in the end, reality still weighed heavily. Even if this wasn't a dream, since it was a world built of words, perhaps it wasn't all that different. No need to think too deeply. At this rate, she'd only become homesick. In any case, she couldn't go back now. She said good morning to Pudding, but a reply came from elsewhere. Did you sleep well? When she looked, it was Jelly climbing onto the bed. Evangeline immediately snapped, get down right now. Jelly complained, wondering why he was treated differently from Pudding. She said she had no interest in sharing a bed with a grown man. Jelly looked wronged, but that guy can turn human too. He's obviously just like me, and yet he pretends otherwise. Evangeline froze in shock. Pudding didn't dare move either. The two of them looked at each other. Really? Pudding let out a meow. She suddenly remembered the thing she had done to Pudding and instantly pulled him out of her arms. The next second, Pudding turned into an adorable little boy. With tearful eyes, he asked, Big sister, do you dislike me now? Evangeline immediately sighed in relief. This was a child, wasn't it? As long as he wasn't a grown man, it was fine. And maybe this was actually a good thing. She had woken up in this body without any warning. Maybe one day she would suddenly disappear too. Even if Pudding woke up one day and lost his caretaker, at least with another beastman like him around, he wouldn't be too lonely. How could I possibly dislike our Pudding? The cat proudly glanced at Andres. Jelly was deeply struck and instantly bristled. He roared, You get down too right now. Pudding turned his head and burrowed into Big Sister's arms. You two have to get along, okay? At that moment, there was a knock at the door. Milady, it's Kana. Good morning, Milady. Is there anything you need me to do today? This child really was diligent. Was it because she was the heroine? Evangeline had no desire to play the role of a villainess in love with the heroine. You don't need to do these things. Kana proudly pinned on the name tag embroidered by Milady. I want to do it myself. Her sister added from the side. Kana wants to repay your kindness, Milady. Since you say so, there's still been no word from Gabriel's side. Could you help me go and see how the matter is being handled? As she said that, she handed Kana a large bag of gold coins. Think of this as errand money and pocket money. Buy whatever you want on the way. Evangeline secretly rejoiced. The heroine's affection level probably wouldn't drop over this, right? With the amount of money Miss had given her, Kana could buy a whole house. Evangeline waved it off. Small case. Be careful on the road. Don't get hurt and don't get cheated. Be careful of strangers and be careful of carriages. Kana said Milady needn't worry, because Milady is always watching over me, right? So nothing bad will happen. The horror villainess whose heart was full of attempts to please the heroine. To the heroine, she had become an object of mad devotion, loved to the point of obsession, as countless eyes watched from behind. She just found it cute. Looking at the bustling street view outside the window, Kana exclaimed, "Sister, every store is shining so brightly. Should we stop by the tailor shop on our way and buy some sweets to take back for the young lady?" Kana, you're not thinking of using the money the young lady gave us, are you? Why not? Isn't this money meant for us to use? Kana lowered her eyes, pretending to be crestfallen. Sister, it's just because I've never been to a place like that before. I'm sorry. Hearing this, Hina's heart instantly ached for Kana, who was born frail and had been sickly until recently, looking as if she could die at any moment. All right, let's go look around on our way back. Really? Thank you, sister. Seeing her sister's bright smile, Hina, who had been keeping a tense face, also revealed a smile. Kana hugged her tightly. Sister believed that one day she would understand that the young lady truly cared for them, although her sister didn't seem to notice. But the young lady was worried about them and specifically let this little thing accompany them. She poked the eye beside her with her fingertip. The entity tightly shut its eyelid as if frightened, then glared at Kana with tears welling up. So cute. She looked at her sister, that back which seemed able to bear everything. She pressed close and rubbed against it. Her sister, who always silently sacrificed for her sick younger sister. She really hoped her sister could taste happiness through this opportunity. Outside the carriage, people were whispering about the owner of this carriage. That phoenix crest, it seems to belong to Count Rosen's family. I heard the Count has a sickly daughter. Could be her. I even heard before that the daughter passed away. Seems it was all rumors. Or maybe she was reborn from the ashes like their family crest. Their jeers were tinged with mockery. However, who could have thought that the jokes they made to mock the Count's family were so close to the truth? A man from the crowd approached. Forgive my presumption. May I ask if you too are the ladies of Rosen? Hina hastily explained the misunderstanding, saying they were the young lady's maids. Upon learning they were not noble ladies, the man's arrogant nature was instantly laid bare. Makes sense to call yourselves ladies of the Rosen family with such shabby outfits. Hina instantly regretted it. Had she known, she would have listened to Kana and bought some new clothes at the tailor shop first. What's worse, they had smeared the young lady's reputation. Your young lady is too absurd. If she's sending you to the temple, she should at least lend you decent clothes. Didn't they say Count Rosen's family was wealthy? Seems that's all there is to it. They don't even have money to buy clothes for their maids. Compared to the man and noble's cynical remarks, Hina was more terrified of the expression on her sister standing beside her. She was so scared she couldn't even smile. From the moment the young lady was mentioned, Kana had completely lost her expression. It was a look she had never seen before, or rather, she had seen it once. Could her sister be wanting to kill that man? Although the thought was absurd, she earnestly prayed in her heart that she wouldn't. As a result, the next second, the laughter abruptly stopped. Hina looked back. The young lady had seemingly appeared out of thin air, stepping out of the carriage. No one could laugh frivolously in front of Evangeline Rosen. A moment ago, Evangeline had been worrying about the two sisters. When will they come back? They've been gone for so long without any news. Her parents must have waited like this for her when she came home late in the past. Are they doing well now? She suddenly missed them so much. The butler thought she was talking about Kana and Hina. They probably haven't reached the Grand Temple yet. Evangeline glanced at the maid serving food behind her. Terrified, she immediately dropped the plate. She knelt on the broken glass, apologizing profusely. Even though her hands and feet were pierced and bleeding, she only watched the young lady's expression. Evangeline helplessly waved her hand. It's fine. Let the butler heal you with holy water. The maids hastily fled. Only she and Jelly were left in the huge dining room. She really wanted to see Kana and Hina. She missed them to death. She was dying of loneliness. She suddenly stood up and decided, Jelly, let's go find Kana and the others. You're too partial to those two humans. This has become overprotective. Jelly reached out his hand. In the blink of an eye, the two found themselves inside the carriage. I've transferred you into the carriage in an inconspicuous way. Are you satisfied? Evangeline praised him for a job well done. He muttered under his breath, yet he managed to complete every single task assigned to him. Just then, the man's words fell clearly into her ears. That young lady was abandoned by her maternal family, Duke Hazukin. So, she doesn't even have money to buy clothes for her maids? Evangeline instantly flew into a rage. That brat! How dare he spout nonsense to my children? Just you wait. The villainess immediately sprang into action and got out of the carriage. Perhaps due to her anger, her voice sounded unusually low. Good sir, what were you talking about with my children just now? The archangel revered by all gods had become a terrifying ghost story in the eyes of others. Evangeline's sudden appearance out of thin air instantly frightened the people who were gossiping behind her back. Escorted by the monster known as Andres, Evangeline stepped onto the ground. The sunlight scattered above her head. Although the blazing sun was high in the sky, it felt like plummeting into deep night. The two sisters also turned to look back. Kana, who was previously gloomy, instantly bloomed into a smile upon seeing the young lady. Hina sighed in relief, as if seeing a savior, although she didn't understand why the young lady suddenly appeared here. If she had come a moment later, Kana would have done something to that noble. Thinking of this, she hurriedly dismissed the thought. How could her sister do such a thing? She grew up at home and knew very little about the outside world, so she didn't know how to interact with nobles. At most, she would rudely talk back a few times. What ability could Kana possibly have to murder a man? Absolument impossible. Evangeline stepped forward and questioned the young master. What were you talking about with my children just now? The man never dreamed the person in question would appear. He began to stammer. So you came together. But why did you get out of the carriage so late? Evangeline stated she was feeling unwell, so she rested in the carriage for a while. She stared at the man, who expressed, "Pardon my rudeness. I am Amulin of Marquis Benson's family." Seeing that the two were visiting for the first time, I just wanted to guide them. Evangeline gave an aggressive smile. I thought you were putting Count Rosen's family and Duke Hazukin's family on par. Were you telling a joke? Knowing the Count's family status wasn't high enough, she dragged the Duke's family into it as well. Amulin seemed to realize she had heard the entire conversation, and his face instantly turned deathly pale. What, does my outfit not suit the temple either? She hadn't bought new clothes either. She just wore a plain dress tucked away in the corner of her wardrobe. Amulin didn't expect her to question him so directly and trembled in fear. At this moment, Gabriel appeared behind the man. How could that be? The Grand Temple always welcomes you, my lady. I am late. I had young Master Benson help receive you. Thank you very much. Amulin hurriedly bowed. You're welcome. It's an honor to be of service. After saying that, he seized the opportunity and fled. Seriously, the male lead should be smarter. He could have easily resolved this. Why didn't he show up when Kana was in trouble? Did you come to see the painting, my lady? No, I was worried about letting these two go alone, and I was also curious about the Grand Temple. Since we're at the temple, we should at least pray. Who knows, maybe as a privilege of being a transmigrator, I might even get to talk to the gods or something. Gabriel arranged for a knight to accompany her. Uriel will take you to the prayer room. Then Gabriel would lead the way for the two sisters. Evangeline breathed a sigh of relief. She really hoped he would just completely lose interest in her like this. Along the way, Kana asked, I heard you're helping our young lady clear her suspicion. How is the progress? Elle apologized. There is no progress yet. Instead, because more and more people are seeing the painting, the rumors are spreading by word of mouth. So are those people also here to see the painting? Yes, most of them are. Guided by Gabriel, they stepped into the interior of the Grand Temple. In the main hall, there was a small but extremely gorgeous fountain. They happened to see a noble lady scooping up some water and then drinking it down. Noble lords who usually found even hand-washing water too dirty were actually drinking from the fountain. Hina asked curiously, can the water in the fountain be drunk? And answered, yes. Because it's holy water, not all visitors can drink it. This is a special treatment provided for distinguished guests who donate generously. It's a display to show the temple's wealth. A trace of gloom inexplicably arose in Hina's heart, and she unconsciously tightened her grip on Kana's hand. Although Kana's hand was squeezed painfully, she seemed to understand her feelings and just silently endured it. Where's the painting? Elle explained that people who saw the painting had completely opposite reactions. Some found it extremely beautiful. while others felt uncomfortable. The moment Hina looked closely at the painting, a wave of nausea suddenly surged. God's blessing? Holy? This is it? This painting? Even depicting the death of the ugliest person would be more beautiful than this piece. On the wooden floor of a collapsed building where the flames seemingly just died out, a cracked char lump that had lost all 4 limbs and was reduced to a torso was silently screaming. Above its head, a blood-stained single eye flickered. Behind it, countless tiny arms bursting from the hellfire were trying to devour the dead. It's indeed very beautiful, Kana said, the corpse casually destroyed by the ghost story villainess who transmigrated after death was actually enshrined by the temple as a masterpiece worshipped by thousands. Looking at the intoxicated believers, Hina only felt it was absurd. They acted as if they had taken hallucinogens, squeezing out the most devout gasps of awe at a puddle of rotting mess. This was true madness. Her sister softly spoke. As expected, it's truly beautiful. Hina's pupils contracted. If what she saw was the same as her own, it was absolutely impossible to say the word beautiful. She must have seen a different form. What magic did the painter cast to create a work with such duality? She finally understood why this painting was still hung in the temple. The polarized reactions actually made the artwork appear more mysterious, right? To those who thought the painting was beautiful, any attempt to reveal the truth was nothing but an act of devaluing art. Elle also felt the painting was unsettling. As for why they saw it differently, they say it's a difference in piety. Just then, Raphael hurriedly ran over. Something terrible has happened. I'll ask them to wait here for a moment. Hina nodded. Kana was staring vacantly at the painting. After admiring it for a long time, she suddenly spoke. Sister, does the painting feel different to you? I think those patterns look exactly like eyes. She turned her back to the painting and looked at her sister. Due to the perfectly matching angle, it looked as if countless wings had unfolded behind her. Hina held her breath. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Eyes. What Kana described was no different from what Hina saw. Then, was her sister praising the sight she saw as beautiful, calling those terrifying eyes beautiful? Ordinary people would not call detached eyeballs beautiful. She wanted to question her, but what could she say to her sister? Tell her she was abnormal? To a child who had been sick for years and finally managed to show a smile, how could she say such hurtful words? She put her arm around Kana's shoulder. Listen to me. Don't tell anyone you saw eyes. Just act like everyone else and think the painting is holy. Understand? Kana nodded meekly. She didn't know if it was after being kidnapped by Danube or after meeting the young lady. Maybe she was like this since she was little, just masked by her frailty and illness. Fortunately, on the surface alone, there was no abnormality in Kana. Moreover, she was deeply favored by the young lady. Perhaps maintaining the status quo was the best policy. Despite reaching this conclusion, she couldn't help but ponder privately. Was all of this just a rationalization she sought because she couldn't face her sister directly? Of course, this hesitation was fleeting. Hina's choice would always put her sister first. She would always protect Kana. On the other side, Raphael reported to the commander. There's a witness who says she wants to testify about that painting. She used to be Evangeline's maid, but later escaped. She witnessed the scene of the young lady coming back from the dead. Reportedly, the young lady used the summoning circle in Danube's drawing to summon something. That thing is definitely not an angel. Daisy recounted her experience at the convent that day. Even if the neck of the person killed by that demon is severed, it will reattach. They move normally as if they never died. If it wasn't for the red line on their neck, they would be indistinguishable from ordinary humans. In order to confirm the painting mentioned by the priest, she came to the temple, and then she found the summoning circle in the painting and resolved to deal with her. Thus, she came to testify. Also a resurrected existence. Yet Evangeline's neck was very clean. What makes that person so special? The day the flames raged, her white hair catching the firelight, bleeding into a vermilion hue, remains vivid in memory to this day. Like a leafless flower blooming on a dead tree, disregarding the omnipotence of God. And a moving corpse is a curiosity-inducing existence. This, rather than awe, is perhaps closer to fear. In case that existence wearing Evangeline's skin got tired of role-playing and disappeared just like that, who knows what would happen? It is exactly because of this that El wanted to help Evangeline. Therefore, he decided to also share the testimony with those who had a favorable impression of Evangeline. Raphael, go and invite my previous guests. The office door was pushed open. Daisy, the maid rumored to have been abandoned at the convent due to blindness. The woman stared at Hina with a noticeably emaciated face. Who is that next to you? It's my sister, staring at Kana's neck, bearing the red scratch marks. The overly shocked Daisy stumbled backward. What had she done? The demon had once asked to be taken to the Rosen Manor. Daisy complied. It seems the demon successfully entered that manor and harmed the people inside. The victim turned out to be the blood relative of a former colleague. I must leave now. Elle was puzzled. You haven't finished testifying. She interrupted him midway through his sentence. What I just said is everything. Is this testimony not enough? Seeing her intensely emotional state, Elle had to let Raphael escort her out. Before leaving, as she brushed past Hina, she urgently whispered, Hina, that's not your sister. In the end, she couldn't bring herself to speak out the whole story. She was even more afraid of hearing Hina say resentment-like, it's all your fault my sister died. What did Miss Daisy just say? Hina hesitated for a moment and said, nothing, when being overjoyed at seeing the dead Danube, when praising that monstrous painting as beautiful. No matter how twisted Kana was, whatever thoughts she harbored. To Hina, she was just her lovely younger sister, right? It should be like that. Elle had no other choice. Since it was like this, he could only help Evangeline in other ways. Meanwhile, Evangeline closed her eyes pretending to pray. Unknowingly, drowsiness washed over her, and she fell fast asleep. She hadn't even seen a god in her dreams. She thought she'd have the transmigrator's privilege to converse with gods. Turns out, they didn't even show up in her dreams. She walked out of the room. Before going to see the commander, she wanted to buy some holy water. Since she was already here, she might as well hoard some recovery items. Even though she didn't know why it had no effect on herself, there would definitely be a use for it. Let's get 10 bottles first. Uriel flattered her like a shop assistant. So spectacular, my lady. I couldn't afford this amount even with several years of my salary. Just as she was about to ask Jelly to carry it, he wore a reluctant expression. Do you expect me to carry this? You're worse than a real demon. Jelly, you won't listen to nice words, will you? After putting on airs, Jelly finally tucked his tail and picked up the holy water, deliberately slowing his pace and pretending it was strenuous. Seriously, it's not even that heavy. What's he pretending for? Forget it. Follow or don't. It's up to him. She ignored Jelly and walked out of the main hall. He's a beast man after all. He can find her just by scent. As soon as she pushed open the door, two familiar figures appeared opposite her. Lord Raphael, Uriel, and Miss Rosen. Hello. Raphael immediately greeted her with an elegant bow. I am Raphael of the Polaros Knights. We've met before. Do you still remember? I was also present when the fire broke out earlier. Was it the commander who invited you to assist this time? Thank you very much. Have you toured our temple? It's very magnificent, right? By the way, I heard a nun here used to work at the Rosen Manor. Do you remember? She looked familiar, but she couldn't recall her name. What is your name? Daisy was a bit surprised. You don't know my name? I lost my memory. My name is Daisy. Did you resign because of me? This wasn't something to broadcast loudly, so she tried to lower her voice as much as possible. Her lips barely moved. It was almost like ventriloquism. Daisy was so frightened she couldn't even speak. Just look at how ferocious the original owner must have been normally to scare someone like this. She definitely didn't know that Evangeline's body was transmigrated into. After all, amnesia doesn't wipe out past sins. To escape the villainous fate, she had to apologize first no matter what. Are you scared? If you're willing, I will compensate you. But the condition is not to spread my matters around. Evangeline is a villainous character. If she sincerely apologized now, she would break character. She should at least use money as compensation and conveniently ask her not to gossip. But Daisy's reaction was strange. Her already pale face now looked as if she were about to die. Have you already spoken about my matters? Already bearing infamy due to Danube's death. Is the villainous title going to be spread now too? But why should she have to bear this sin? To whom did you say it? Did you tell someone? Daisy answered, Gabriel knows. She finally breathed a sigh of relief. Pretty lucky. Gabriel shouldn't do anything to hurt her. Seeing Jelly slowly tagging along, she couldn't help but grumble. Just how long did you dawdle before coming? Jelly looked at Daisy awkwardly. Daisy's face grew even paler than when she saw the young lady. You two know each other? Daisy lowered her head and tried to leave. Evangeline reflexively grabbed her wrist. If you have any wishes you want me to grant, just come to me. I will fulfill them for you. Of course, the victim wouldn't just dissipate their resentment because of this. Ultimately, this was just self-satisfaction and a fig leaf for breaking the villainous route. After letting go, Daisy ran away like fleeing from danger. She's gone. Raphael chuckled, feigning a relaxed manner. Did you two have a pleasant chat? To protect your privacy, I kept my ears tightly covered and didn't dare to listen. Not really. I feel like she didn't want to talk to me much. Honestly, I can't even remember who she is. The man paused for a moment, then burst out laughing. I can't recognize all the servants in my own house either. Though he was smiling amiably, he looked extremely suspicious. When Daisy was talking to her, she suddenly ran away. Wouldn't a normal person ask for the reason? Could he be the two-faced type? Raphael looked at Jelly and asked, "Is the one next to you your bodyguard?" "So he's a knight. You weren't wearing a sword, so I didn't recognize you." While she was struggling with how to smooth things over, Jelly shrugged. "It doesn't matter. Even without a sword, I'm still excellent." Raphael didn't press further. "I see. You are heading to the knight's reception, right? Then I should head back together with you." Raphael and Uriel walked in front. Evangeline whispered to Jelly, "How do you and Daisy know each other?" Jelly felt they were in a mutually helpful relationship. "You didn't bully her, did you?" Jelly mumbled his reply. "No, I actually helped them. I brought her out, and we escaped together." Based on this, Evangeline deduced the plot. The two were caught by slave traders or something similar, and then escaped together. Daisy was scared when she saw Jelly just now because it brought back those terrible memories. This condition is called post-traumatic stress disorder. Jelly looked smug. The aftermath was handled very cleanly. It seems they even disposed of the slave traders cleanly. "Good job." She patted Jelly's head as a reward. Raphael stared at them with a mixed expression. "You have a really good relationship with your bodyguard." Hearing this, she quickly withdrew her hand and coughed twice to cover up her embarrassment. Not good in the slightest. Raphael gazed quietly, seemingly realizing that Evangeline Rosen was the far more dangerous figure. Deep in the mountains, Jim, in order to gain inspiration to paint a masterpiece surpassing his previous works, began searching for places permeated with the scent of death. Later, he took a liking to a corpse, praised it to the old lady who had lost her child, and asked if he could paint the corpse. But how could any family member tolerate the desecration of a corpse? The old lady cursed and drove him away. Unwilling to give up the painting, Jim actually stole the corpse in the dead of night. The old lady flew into a rage. She and the villagers found Jim and beat him to death alive. Then a strange thing happened. At the same time as his death, as if following the demise of its master, Jim's painting began to burn. The serene and sacred Grand Temple suddenly erupted with jarring screams. "We can't let the holy painting burn like this." Hearing the chaos ahead, Evangeline stopped in her tracks. After the ghost story heroine made her first appearance, the fanatic believers who were once madly obsessed with the painting now became her most docile lambs. Piercing screams echoed one after another within the temple. The wailing crowd all stared in the same direction. Raphael also followed their gaze. The painting, which was supposed to depict the aftermath of the fire, had now reignited with roaring flames. As the knights approached, the crowd actually gathered towards them. "Sir Knight, the painting is on fire. Please put out the fire." The crowd voiced different pleas. Their desperate desire was simply to extinguish the flames in the painting. If it's a painting that can drive people crazy to this extent, it'd be better to just let it burn. A panicked Michel ran towards the painting, muttering, "We can't let this painting just burn away." The next second, he caught the painting with his bare hands. They had locked him in his room. How did he appear here? Even though Raphael wanted to stop him, it was too late. He tried to extinguish the raging flames with his own body. Madman, doesn't he feel the heat? He tried to shake off the people around him. "Michel, snap out of it. Let it go." The painting continued to burn, now more than half destroyed. Michel's skin was roasted red, sparks splashing onto his face. At this rate, that guy will be burned alive. Raphael, dragging people clinging to him, struggled forward. Must he resort to forcefully pulling these people away like animals? Just then, an exceptionally aggressive voice came from behind. "What's the situation?" A corpse whispered in the ear. The heat wave receded, and a chill set in. It felt as if a colossal monster behind was glaring fixedly at Raphael. Evangeline Rosen calmly traversed this hellish landscape. The people who had been clinging to Raphael all stopped moving. As if stripped of all their souls, they simply stared at Evangeline. The painful figures from a moment ago, the agonizing screams, all came to an abrupt halt like an illusion. Because of this, she was able to walk unhindered right up to Michel. Cradling the painting, Michel looked up at Evangeline. At that very moment, Raphael witnessed the birth of yet another fanatic. The moment his eyes met Evangeline's, what exactly did Michel see in those eyes? Longing, surprise, awe. Even exhausting all adjectives would not be enough to fully describe Michel's state of mind at this moment. She lightly moved her finger. Jelly, accurately understanding her cue, immediately presented the holy water. Then he uncorked it and poured the water over Michel. 1 bottle, 2 bottles, 3 bottles, until the flames were completely extinguished. The raging fire that seemed ready to consume Michel was thus easily quenched. In the silence, only the sound of falling water drops could be clearly heard. Soon, Michel exhausted his strength and collapsed. Uriel rushed over to catch him. Evangeline, who alone remained completely unfazed, said with her usual expression, "Since holy water has been poured, there's no need for further treatment." She couldn't help but complain inwardly. Are the moral ethics of this other world all like this? Not taking any measures is one thing, but why is everyone just standing there blankly watching the show? A bunch of guys with absolutely no moral compass. Her taut nerves instantly relaxed. The Archbishop arrived late and walked towards her. "Miss Rosen, thank you very much for saving our temple's night. We will compensate you for the holy water used to put out the fire." Then she looked at Jelly. "Go get the rest of the holy water and put in the carriage first. So you brought me here just to torture me?" Evangeline warned, "Before I really get angry, you'd better obey." "Yes, yes," Jelly muttered and curled his tail. The Archbishop and Raphael were conversing in low tones about something. The voices were so soft they couldn't be heard clearly. She felt like he was secretly glancing at her. Could these two be discussing her behind her back? Raphael suddenly cleared his throat to change the subject. "Archbishop, pardon my presumption. Shouldn't we first let Sir Michel lie down and rest?" Subsequently, the Archbishop took over the aftermath operations. Evangeline followed Raphael to find Commander. She was just worrying about where the children went. The children must be anxious from waiting. "I must go quickly." On the way back, Raphael thanked her for saving Michel. Although he lost consciousness, thanks to the holy water, he didn't sustain any injuries. "Thank you so much." Uriel also followed suit to thank her. "It's what I should do." Evangeline rejoiced inwardly. Could she finally wash away her infamy? It'd be great if she could completely break free from the villainous route with this. Meanwhile, the believers inside the temple remained absolutely motionless. The priest wondered why they refused to leave. Now, the painting has been burned away. What are they still looking at? The priest followed the direction the young lady pointed at, and then understood. Why hadn't they noticed it before? It couldn't be more obvious. Everyone's eyes were focused on that fair and beautiful young lady. To confirm whether the ghost story heroine was a human or a ghost, a man bent down to kiss and check her pulse. He originally thought this was a forcibly manipulated corpse, but she surprisingly still had a heartbeat. Arriving at the door of the reception room, Evangeline sat up and took a deep breath. She must salvage the villainous image molded by Daisy's words. As soon as he saw her, Gabriel greeted her with a bow. "Welcome back, Miss Rosen." Immediately after, Kana abruptly stood up and threw herself into her arms. "My lady, that was so dangerous." "Hehe, I'm sorry." Strangely, Hina, who would normally dissuade her, remained silent. "Did you have a fight with your sister?" Kana whispered in her ear. "No, she's been like this ever since listening to what Daisy said earlier." What shocking words did she exactly hear to not even bother caring for the sister she dotes on so much? I'll ask her to sit down first. Raphael explained the previous situation to the commander. After listening, he thanked the lady. "Thank you for saving Michel. Since the Archbishop is personally on the scene, things should calm down smoothly. This way, the number of people raising doubts about the Danube incident will also decrease. The investigations done so far to take down this painting will also come in handy. It seems he is hinting that he wasn't standing idly by. Is that so? I'm curious about the efforts you've made. Aren't you here precisely because a witness appeared? So, did Daisy say anything about me?" Gabriel averted his gaze. "Well, I didn't hear her mention you." "Strange. Daisy clearly said she brought it up." Seeing her skeptical expression, Gabriel handed over a piece of paper. "This is the testimony of the witness just now. It says the convent mother used the same summoning circle as the painting hanging in the temple to summon an ominous entity to acquire abilities, and used this power to commit atrocities everywhere. Where on earth was his summoning circle sold? The painting that burned up just now could also be related to this. When Evangeline Rosen read this name, her vision suddenly distorted. The text turned into gibberish. Of all times, the translator bugs out now. Is this for real? Flipping to the back, it was still the same. She had become illiterate again. Gabriel looked completely unbothered. As I said, I didn't hear anything. You can take the paper with you. Seeing his attitude, it shouldn't be anything important. His expression was also quite placid. Anyhow, she'd take the paper and look at it later. She handed the paper to Kana. Upon seeing the contents, Kana blanked for a moment, glaring fiercely at the slip of paper. The next second, she reverted back to normal. Understood, my lady. I will keep it safe. I absolutely won't let it be damaged. Was it her imagination? She seemed to have meddled with that paper just now. Are you satisfied with this, my lady? It's more than enough. Didn't I say it before? I want to do my part for you. He really knows how to talk pretty. Just as she was marveling at the capability of the romance novel male lead, a knock sounded on the door. Commander, the Archbishop says he wishes to see you. Upon hearing this, Elle stood up. Let's first escort Miss Rosen to her carriage. When they came outside again, the sun had already set. Jelly hurriedly came down to greet her. Master, you're here. Evangeline praised him while rubbing his head. Good work. Gabriel suddenly called out to her. Turning back, she saw Gabriel extending his hand, probably to help her into the carriage. She placed her hand on his, but that hand was gradually raised. She watched as the man slowly leaned in. Before she could react, he pressed his nose against the back of her hand. I look forward to the day we meet again. She stood awkwardly on the spot without any response and went straight into the carriage. When his warm and soft breath brushed across her palm, for some reason, she suddenly felt so shy she wanted to flee immediately. The carriage had long disappeared from sight. Raphael's jaw dropped. The commander has become so weird. What on earth did you just do? After saying goodbye, he recalled how exceptionally small that hand was. Its temperature was also unusually low. When he posed to kiss the back of her hand to check her pulse, he deliberately slowed down to count her heartbeats. It was slow, but there was indeed a heartbeat. He originally thought it was a forcefully manipulated corpse, but clearly she was alive. However, he believed that what resided inside was not human. Evangeline treated humans like ants. It even made people feel that it was only natural to be treated that way. The scene of his first meeting with Evangeline was still vivid in his mind. Among all living things, she alone possessed the body of the dead. Amidst thousands of warm existences, she alone was icy cold all over. Because of this, Evangeline Rosen appeared so special. Elle subconsciously pursed his lips. Even though there wasn't a real kiss, that faint, low temperature lingered like a brand. Inside Count Rosen's mansion, Evangeline leaned against the bed as if she had lost her soul. What on earth was that just now? Although she knew it was romantic etiquette, her feelings were still a bit complicated when experiencing it firsthand. It wasn't like his lips actually touched her. It was just a gesture. Yet, the image lingered in her mind. She repeatedly reminded herself to stop thinking about it. It must be because of his beauty trap that she acted weirdly, right? That's it. Miss, you'll catch a cold like this. Kana draped a shawl over her shoulders. To show her gratitude, she used a fruit fork to pick up a piece of fruit and handed it over. Kana's face instantly flushed red, and she took it and started eating. She quietly observed Hina's reaction. Hina, who witnessed this scene, should have lectured her younger sister a bit like usual. Instead, she stood frozen in place, seemingly lost in thought. Hina only snapped back to reality when her name was called. Are you not feeling well? If you're tired, go and rest. No need. I'm Fina. You sound so weak when you speak. There's no way you're fine. Go rest. Hina nodded and walked out of the room. Kana, is Hina feeling unwell? She's not sick, but I don't know what's going on. She won't even tell me. It must be because of what Daisy said. I really should have asked clearly back then. What exactly did Daisy say? Could there be any discoveries on that testimony? So she asked Kana to give her the note. Kana froze for a moment. Miss, I'm sorry. She choked back sobs as she handed over the paper. I accidentally ruined it while washing the clothes. I'm sorry, Mississippi. I'm truly sorry. Although not a single word was legible anymore, our Kana was crying. It's okay. Why would I blame you just for ruining a few pieces of paper? I must absolutely protect our baby heroine. I can't just lose my temper at a child. After all, she was the one who initially handed the paper to Kana. The responsibility naturally lay with herself. Since things have come to this, I might as well find the person involved and ask her directly. She asked the butler about Daisy's whereabouts. After escaping from the convent, she would probably go to the Noah orphanage, right? Afterwards, she changed into her traveling clothes. She also prepared enough gold coins and ordered Jelly to buy more bread. Kana and she went to buy clothes for the orphanage children. Pudding stayed in the carriage. The goal was to find Daisy, but since they were visiting an orphanage, it wouldn't look good to go empty-handed. Do people who volunteer at orphanages usually bring food and gifts? She at least had this much basic courtesy. With a grand wave of her hand, she ordered, "Wrap up everything from left to right for me." The clothing store owner tremblingly handed her an umbrella. Miss, please take this umbrella as well. The weather doesn't look good, but how would he get home himself? Evangeline originally wanted to politely decline, but ultimately accepted the umbrella. If she refused, rumors might spread that she wouldn't even accept a commoner's gift, adding to her notoriety. I'll make good use of it. Just as she walked out of the store, the sky indeed began to drop rain. Kana, get in the carriage and wait. Jelly, move these breads and clothes to the carriage. Don't slack off. Jelly pouted, but obediently did the work. The raindrops gradually became heavier. It seemed they hadn't gone far when they saw a familiar figure in the distance. The person was sitting in the rain, looking devoid of any will to live. Upon closer inspection, it was none other than Daisy. Daisy, who had desperately tried to escape the grasp of the ghost story's female lead, somehow always managed to stumble upon the crime scenes of demon summoning. And this time, the price involved the children she loved the most. Daisy collapsed helplessly on the ground. Suddenly, a shadow loomed over her. Daisy, what are you doing here? A familiar voice made her abruptly look up. It was exactly the person she had been desperately searching for earlier, Lady Evangeline. Why are you here? Because I was looking for you. Daisy couldn't understand why she was looking for her. Could it be because of that promise? She tightly grabbed the hem of Evangeline's dress. I have a request. Didn't you say you would help grant my wish? I am willing to offer myself. Please help me. Evangeline reached out her hand to her. All right, I promise you. Knowing full well she shouldn't touch that hand, Daisy still clasped it. A cold sensation, like a snake, wrapped around her arm and climbed up to choke her throat. She had ultimately thrust her face into the snake's maw, but the snake's belly was surprisingly warm. It was utterly absurd. After escaping the temple, Daisy had rented a cheap inn to stay. For some reason, she missed her younger siblings at the orphanage exceptionally today. With this feeling, she decided to visit the orphanage, perhaps because it had been a long time since her last visit. The orphanage felt unusually unfamiliar. Most notably, there was no sound at all, and it was completely empty. When she pushed open the door to the director's office, she saw something there that absolutely shouldn't exist. An incredibly familiar summoning circle. Why was that thing here? A foul, bloody stench filled the air. For a moment, Daisy couldn't face reality. Could the director and the children have all become sacrifices for the summoning circle? Clinging to a final sliver of hope, she turned the orphanage upside down searching. But let alone the presence of the living, she couldn't even find any corpses. I have to find the guards. No, since there are no bodies and people just disappeared, they won't investigate. Furthermore, since a summoning circle appeared, it couldn't be resolved through ordinary means. She had to find someone else now. Someone who could immediately resolve this situation, just as Daisy hoped. She wandered aimlessly through the city and was suddenly knocked down by an oncoming man. Without her noticing, the gathering dark clouds started to drop rain. The rain hitting the corners of her eyes, mixed with her tears flowing down her cheeks. Why was she always the one encountering these things? In her moment of utter despair, Evangeline appeared. Thus, the opening scene occurred. Daisy followed the young lady into the carriage. Kana snatched Jelly's coat to drape over the young lady, but the young lady instead draped it over Daisy. Jelly gloated, "I guess you've lucked out." "Shut up, Mr. Jelly." All right, children, stop arguing." She turned and asked about Daisy's request. "Everyone in the orphanage has disappeared. Miss, please help me find the director and the children. Are there any relevant clues?" Daisy thought for a moment and said the name Troy. He is the director's son. He must have done it. Unlike the kind-hearted director, Troy has had a vicious personality since childhood. Because the director not only loved him, but also loved the other children equally, he developed a severe inferiority complex. He was particularly violent towards the children the director cared about. He once poured piping hot stew on the arm of a friend who was about to be adopted, leaving a scar and causing the adoption to fall through. He wouldn't let the healthy children eat and said it didn't matter because he was the director's son. No matter how much the director disciplined him, he never changed. When he grew up, the children and the director could no longer tolerate it and kicked him out. Even so, he still came to make trouble every time, threatening to destroy the orphanage. Hearing this, Evangeline was consumed by anger. Just you wait, Troy. Although we've never met, I'll definitely let you taste the villainess's iron hammer. The descent of a true god was viewed by the world as a terrifying ghost story, while a demon that fed on children was worshipped as a deity, imprisoned deep beneath the orphanage for 80 years. Until today, the false god met the true god. The missing children and the director were also all trapped here. The children pinned all their hopes on the director. Are we going to be sold? The director hugged them tightly. Endure it a little longer, child. Just endure a little longer, and everything will be fine. Little did they know that right next door, a man was entirely bound in iron chains, his eyes blindfolded with a black cloth. He had a pair of broken horns on his head. He constantly repeated his own name, Melek, to stay conscious. Meanwhile, the great detective Evangeline decided to show her skills. Rather than looking for the kidnapped children, it would be faster to catch Troy first and interrogate him. The problem was how to find Troy. Jelly, can you find Troy? Even I can't possibly do that. That's true. We don't have anything with his scent to track either. Criminals always leave traces behind. Let's go to the Ainoa orphanage first. The group, 2 humans and 2 beasts, boarded the carriage together. It's so quiet. Just as Kana said, the surroundings looked gloomy and eerie. It felt exactly like ghosts might haunt the place. In her previous life, she was the type of person who would rather die than watch a horror movie. It's fine, calm down. This isn't a supernatural trope within a romance worldview. As long as there's no setting where the female lead can see ghosts, a ghost won't suddenly pop out. Miss, please look over there. As Kana pointed her small hand, Evangeline's heart practically leaped out of her chest. What is that thing? Its walking posture doesn't look like an ordinary person's at all. I hate ghosts, it's so scary. Did she transmigrate only for it to turn into a terrifying ghost story? Troy? Daisy's tone was uncertain. After a careful observation, she rushed straight out of the carriage. Seeing that it was human, Evangeline calmed her racing heart. Then there was nothing to be afraid of. Jelly attack. Me again? Jelly impatiently snapped his fingers. Troy, who was about to run away, suddenly froze in place. Now, the culprit had actively delivered himself to confess. All they needed to do now was interrogate him. But in the next second, Troy suddenly pitched forward. Behind him stood Daisy, holding a high heel. Without anyone noticing, she had circled around behind Troy and delivered a heavy blow to the back of his head with her shoe heel. Everyone stood stunned. Jelly clapped approvingly. Do you really enjoy whacking the back of people's heads that much? Evangeline was so scared, she secretly stepped back. Daisy seemed to have violent tendencies. I must never make an enemy out of her. Jelly reached out and poked him. This guy isn't dead, is he? The sharp-nosed Jelly wrinkled his nose. The smell of alcohol is overwhelming. Seeing him stumbling around, it turned out he was drunk. He probably sold the children for money to drink. It's a typical fantasy villain move. Kana took the opportunity to kick him while he was down. It seems it will take quite a while for him to sober up. Daisy lowered her head. I'm sorry for taking matters into my own hands. Anyway, let's go inside and wait for him to wake up. We can also search the orphanage inside and out while we're at it. We might even find some evidence. Daisy went to the bedroom, took out a candle from the drawer, and lit it. Kana reached out her little hand. Give me one. Daisy obediently handed it over. Jelly tossed Troy onto the bed. Daisy looked anxiously at the bed. This is the children's bed. Please be careful. Aren't those kids already gone? The young lady said she would help find them. Evangeline waved her hand, gesturing for them to stop. Kids, even if you're a bickering duo who secretly care for each other, stop arguing for now. Jelly, you stay here. Okay. I'll keep a close eye on this guy. She rubbed Pudding's head. Then let's do a thorough search. They searched the rooms one by one. No one in the bathroom. No one in the hallway. As soon as they walked into the dining room, they smelled the aroma of thick soup. since the smell is still so prominent. They couldn't have been missing for more than a day or so. The chances of the children being safe should be quite high. That's rather fortunate. Just as she was thinking this, a strange sound suddenly came over. Even though the building was completely deserted, it seemed like a voice drifting in the wind, and it seemed she was the only one who could hear it. It sounded like someone mumbling about being hungry. Following the sound, she found a room hidden in the deepest corner. She stopped in front of the director's office door. The sound was coming from here. Just as she reached out to open the door, Daisy suddenly shouted to stop her. No, that door can't be opened. Everyone knew she was the possessed ghost story heroine. Only she herself was still secretly playing the role of the villainess. It wasn't until the day that she realized. She had actually been exposed on the very first day. Just as Evangeline was about to push open the director's office door, she was stopped by Daisy's shout, but the door was already open. Is there something dangerous inside? A summoning circle. Another summoning circle. Seriously, it seems everyone on the entire street is using it except her. It turned out Daisy stopped her out of fear that she would get angry. Since it was already open anyway, they might as well investigate. The director might have secretly left some clues before being kidnapped. There were no signs of a struggle in the room. There was nothing in the wardrobe either. Nothing on the desk. Evangeline gave a violent tug. The previously locked drawer was instantly yanked entirely out. Papers fluttered everywhere. Upon closer inspection, the content of the documents was very strange. She handed them to Kana to examine. If these documents were real, then Daisy's perception of this orphanage was completely wrong. Or rather, she had lied to them. Once a year, sometimes twice. These documents were ledgers recording the monetary proceeds from child trafficking over the past 12 years. Can you explain what this is about? That's impossible, Daisy said. The director is so selfless and devoted to us. There must be a mistake somewhere. It must have been Troy's doing. But that made no sense at all. 12 years ago, Troy was only 5 years old. How could a 5-year-old child keep ledgers, let alone traffic humans? It seems we need to bring Troy himself here to ask him personally. Hearing this, Pudding immediately took action. Before long, Jelly, with scratch marks on his face, came rushing over while carrying Troy all the way. Master, please do something about this guy, Pudding. Pudding strutted proudly. Nice catwalk, Pudding. Jelly was on the verge of tears. She always favored that guy. Then he kicked Troy awake. Hurry up and get up. I want to be praised too. Troy struggled to get up from the ground. Where's this? I must stop them quickly. As he looked up, he saw Daisy. Did that person hate him so much that she ultimately brought people to come looking for him? But I don't have time to dawdle here right now. I'm begging you. Can you just get lost? Daisy confronted him about the ledgers. The man laughed, a mix of mockery and powerlessness. Even if you know, what do you want to do? You won't believe a word I say anyway. Evangeline spoke up, gesturing to Jelly. Yes, master. He instantly grabbed Troy. Listen here, Troy. We are looking for the missing children and collecting clues. Cooperate with us. However, the boy was entirely unappreciative. Looking at your demeanor, you must be some big shot. Why should I believe you? If you have free time to meddle with insignificant things like us, why don't you just go attend your banquets instead? Or just feign mercy, throw a few coppers, and wash your hands of it. Kana immediately switched to combat mode. Daisy broke out in a cold sweat. Troy, do you have a death wish? Do you want to go to heaven right now? Judging by his attitude, this guy definitely knew something. Interrogating him would be futile. It would be better to focus the clues on that sound. The sound was coming from the empty wardrobe. It sounded like it was saying it was hungry. Evangeline climbed into the wardrobe. She carefully felt around the back wall, inside the wardrobe, and pushed hard against the panel. As a result, the entire back wall of the wardrobe fell backward. Inside, there was actually a staircase leading underground. At the same time, Hina sat blankly in the courtyard. Kana had been out with the young lady for a while now. Why wasn't she back so late? Could something have happened? Had she known this would happen, she wouldn't have cared about those words and would have gone with them. Well, she never got to see Kana again. Unexpectedly, Gabriel came to visit at this time. Hina hurriedly ran up to seek his help. The young lady has been out for a long time and hasn't returned. I'm very worried that something might have happened to her. Could you please help me? The man immediately agreed and stated he would bring the knights along to go there. Since the ghost story heroine's first public appearance, countless followers had been born, going mad for her. They even became less than human. Ever since Daisy said that her sister was no longer human, Hina had been deliberately distancing herself from Kana. It wasn't until the sister she had grown up with left that she felt immense regret. What if she wasn't around and something happened to that child? But she didn't know how to face her once they met. If Kana knew that she had actually been swayed by a single phrase like that, what kind of expression would she make? Elle, who had agreed to help find them, told her not to worry too much. Both the young lady and your sister will be fine. Hina didn't dare to overthink it anymore. I'm willing to believe that. Meanwhile, putting guarded outside the wardrobe, the remaining 5 carried candles and walked into the basement of the orphanage. Daisy asked worriedly, "What if the children aren't down here either?" "Miss Daisy, are you doubting our young lady's judgment?" Evangeline said it was fine. She was just feeling anxious. At this moment, Jelly caught a whiff of a foul, bloody stench. It seems something is indeed hidden down here. Troy had never heard of such a passage. "Aren't you the director's son? You don't know either?" Troy didn't answer, only urging them to go down quickly. Jelly directly gave him a thump. "What kind of attitude is that when talking to my master? No matter how you looked at him, this guy didn't seem like the culprit." Deep underground, a demon with broken horns was bound by iron chains, motionless. "It's been 10 days. Aren't you hungry?" Melek swallowed hard, his stomach growling constantly. "The sacrifices are right in front of you. Why won't you eat?" "I absolutely won't eat meat. Especially children, I won't eat them." The figure's lips curled into a bizarre smile, and she burst into laughter as if hearing a joke. "That's truly the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. You're a demon. 20 years ago, you were happily chewing on live infants and burning them for fun. How come now you're playing innocent and rejecting the sacrifices? 20 years ago, she was also an orphan here. The director highly appreciated her and was even willing to share those dirty deeds. That's the demon who helps grant your wishes. As long as you please the demon, you will receive rewards. The food you eat and the clothes you wear are all bought with the money the demon gives. You know I view you very specially, right? You must assist me well in the future too." Since then, she inherited the orphanage and those useless children. "Do you know how much resolve it took for me to summon you again? And now, after everything, you want to play the good guy?" The demon, however, stated that the Melek from back then wasn't him. "You pitiful fool. You're still living in the past." Even the demon began to pity her. "I like to see how long you can pretend to be noble. In the end, you'll still devour the children, just like in the past." Having said that, she left. At the same time, the director found a way to escape. "Can you stay quiet and follow me slowly?" Hearing this, the children immediately hushed. "Everyone line up and follow me this way. We might get discovered, so absolutely do not make loud noises." The boy at the back felt something was strange, as if he had missed something important. He turned back to look, and it was Luma, who had disappeared long ago. The girl didn't have time to stop Lanin. "We'll be discovered by the bad guys this way. But even so, we can't just leave Luma behind." The boy hurriedly tried to wake Luma up. "Pull yourself together. Hurry up and follow the director so we can leave here quickly." He suddenly stopped moving. Looking up, he realized there was an entity that was neither human nor ghost, shackled by chains. He looked ahead. Footsteps. The girl looked towards the door as if seeing a savior. "It's Sister Daisy. Daisy is here to save us. Children, are you all okay?" The children rushed over with faces full of tears. The director couldn't understand how she appeared here. And even her son, Troy, had come. "I didn't want you to see me in such a pathetic state. To think things would turn out like this." The moment the director reached out her hand, Troy warily took a step back, but he was still pulled into her embrace. Honestly, but in the very next second, she shockingly thrust a pre-hidden knife into Troy. "My disappointing son, wouldn't it have been better if you just obediently drank the wine Mommy fed you and passed out? That way, the sacrifices would have been other children." Daisy froze in place. Immediately after, the director burst into loud laughter. "Melek, if you refuse to eat the children, then use my son as a sacrifice. Troy at least has this much value.